just like to sit in the back in the dark with no one watching me just to gauge the audience and see if they laugh as hard as I do.
You always want to tell a fun, exciting story, and every time I've ever made a movie, I go into it going, I want this to be the best movie ever made.
Jack Black isn't exactly who you'd expect to be at the center of a Hollywood meltdown, but according to insiders, that's exactly what happened. After months of controversy surrounding Disney's Snow White remake, Jack Black, star of the box office smashing Minecraft movie, allegedly confronted Rachel Zegler backstage. His words? Blunt. His tone? Dead serious. And what he said reportedly sent Zegler into therapy. What started as Disney's golden reboot of a classic fairy tale turned into a public relations disaster. And right at the eye of the storm, a rising star clashing with a comedy legend, and an audience that had enough. You'd expect Jack Black to be cracking jokes, not causing Hollywood panic. But according to multiple insiders, that's exactly what he did. In a moment that insiders say was more powerful than any PR statement, Jack Black directly confronted Rachel Zegler behind closed doors. And what followed left the room frozen. Here's what we know. After months of Snow White backlash, Zegler was backstage at a private event, reportedly holding court with her usual mix of confidence and snark. Then, Jack Black walked in, fresh, off the overwhelming success of the Minecraft movie. The vibe shifted instantly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't grandstand. But every word hit like a sledgehammer. One source said, it wasn't an argument, it was a reckoning. He questioned her choices, point blank. Why did you sign up to play a classic Disney character just to tear it down? Why mock the story that made generations fall in love with fairy tales? What exactly did you think fans were going to feel? According to one witness, Zegler tried to laugh it off. A quick smirk, a shoulder shrug, but Black didn't budge. That same witness said, his face never changed. It was serious, dead serious. He didn't stop at the interviews. He brought up the bigger picture, the fan alienation, the loss of magic. The fact that Snow White was no longer being talked about as a movie, but as a debate topic. This isn't supposed to be a TED Talk, he reportedly said. It's a fairy tale. It's supposed to mean something to people. Witnesses say the moment was icy, not explosive, not theatrical, just cold. Black didn't yell. He didn't need to. According to one insider, he looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're killing the magic." Zegler's team noticed the shift. Her posture changed. She wasn't defiant anymore. She was quiet, pale, and after that moment, something broke. Reports say she left early. Insiders say her management quietly announced that she'd be stepping back for her mental health. Behind the scenes, she entered therapy. The narrative flipped. No longer just a PR firestorm, now a personal crisis. Jack Black never made a public statement. He didn't tweet. He didn't do interviews about it. He didn't have to. Because by the end of that week, everyone in the industry knew Jack said what everyone else was too afraid to. And just like that, Rachel Zegler wasn't just a trending topic. She was the face of a full-blown Disney disaster. Rachel Zegler wasn't supposed to be controversial. She was handpicked by Disney. Young, talented, and fresh off Spielberg's West Side Story, she landed the coveted role of Snow White, the first Disney princess, the one that built the entire empire. This was supposed to be her Cinderella moment. But even before filming wrapped, interviews began surfacing that left fans confused, then frustrated, then outright furious. Zegler openly criticized the original Snow White, calling the prince a stalker and saying her version of the character wouldn't be saved by a man. She said things like, "It's not 1937 anymore." Fair point. Except she wasn't just updating the story, she was dismantling it. The love story? Irrelevant. The prince? Possibly getting cut entirely. The dwarves? Replaced with CGI magical creatures. And the tone? Less enchanted forest, more girl boss TED Talk. Fans didn't see it as empowerment. They saw it as disrespect. The internet didn't wait. TikToks, Twitter threads, YouTube commentary, it all exploded. Edits of Zegler mocking the original were clipped and reposted, each time with angrier captions. It wasn't just criticism, it was memes, mockery, and complete rejection of the movie before it even released. Viewers called her arrogant, out of touch, even ungrateful for tearing apart a legacy she was supposed to honor. Instead of pulling back, Zegler doubled down. In response to the backlash, she said she didn't care what randoms online thought. She referred to critical fans as trolls, and that's when the tide turned from annoyed to hostile. Because fans weren't just upset about her. They were tired of Hollywood rewriting stories they loved. And Zegler, right or wrong, became the face of it all. What should have been a smooth promo tour turned into a crisis management campaign. Behind the scenes, Disney began to panic. Executives started pulling Zegler from interviews, canceling press appearances, and scrubbing clips from social media. There were even rumors of media coaches and handlers being assigned just to control what she said in public. But the damage was done. The vibe had shifted. This wasn't a fairy tale anymore. It was a cautionary tale. Even her co-stars started distancing themselves. Behind closed doors, insiders described the mood on set as tense, awkward, and exhausting. Disney tried to fix it quietly, but then something totally unexpected happened. While Snow White burned, another movie rose from the ashes, and it was the last one anyone saw coming. The Minecraft movie, starring Jack Black, was supposed to be a niche project. Just another video game adaptation with blocky visuals and meme potential, but it dominated the box office. Opening weekend, Minecraft pulled in more than Snow White had made worldwide over several weeks. Theaters were packed, teens were showing up in suits. Viewers were cheering and clapping in the middle of the film like it was a concert. The contrast was brutal. Snow White, empty theaters, negative press, online ridicule. Minecraft, viral clips, word-of-mouth hype, massive earnings, and the star at the heart of it, the same man who allegedly called Rachel Zegler out for forgetting what storytelling is about. The moment Jack Black walked out of that room, the damage control began. Rachel Zegler was shaken, and Disney absolutely rattled. Just days after the backstage blow-up, studio execs were on the phone with crisis PR firms. Zegler was pulled from scheduled interviews, talk show appearances were canceled last minute, and her face slowly started, disappearing from the very campaign she was meant to lead. Behind the scenes, sources say Disney's top brass were furious, not at Jack Black, but at themselves. How did we let this happen? Why did no one stop her sooner? They had spent millions building the Snow White reboot as a centerpiece of their live-action renaissance. But now, the buzz wasn't about the film's visuals, performances, or story. It was about how completely out of touch it had become. Worse yet, Disney insiders say test screenings had already flagged major issues months earlier. Viewers described the film as soulless, preachy, and political. But no one wanted to challenge Zegler. No one wanted the headlines that came with it, until Jack did. In response, the studio hit the panic button. According to leaks, reshoots were quietly approved, without Zegler's full knowledge at first. Alternate scenes were commissioned, marketing language was toned down, but it was too late. The public had already made up its mind, and they weren't wrong. Snow White wasn't being reimagined. It was being repurposed. Gone was the romantic fantasy, the fairy tale charm, the classic prince and dwarves. What replaced it felt like a manifesto, and fans didn't come for that. Meanwhile, Jack Black was becoming an unlikely hero. While Disney flailed, he kept promoting Minecraft, smiling with fans, showing up at theaters. The contrast was brutal. One side felt fake, corporate, and miserable. The other felt fun, real, and honest. Even Disney's CEO, Bob Iger, reportedly demanded an internal review of how the Snow White reboot became so alienating. His exact words, according to a source close to the project, "We promised magic and gave them a lecture. No amount of re-edits or social media posts could fix it." The studio had ignored the warning signs. They let the tone drift too far from what people loved about the original. And in the vacuum left by silence, Jack Black became the voice of reason. The man known for his goofy energy and larger-than-life characters had just reminded the most powerful studio in the world of one simple truth. Audiences don't want to be told what to think. They want to feel something. And Disney, for the first time in years, had forgotten how to do that. Before the headlines, before the therapy, before Jack Black ever said a word, it started with a single interview. Rachel Zegler had just been announced as the new face of Disney's Snow White, a dream role, a career maker, a billion-dollar spotlight. But instead of leaning into the magic, she did something no one expected. She mocked it. "It's not about the love story," she said with a smirk. "We didn't do that. That's not part of the plot anymore." And just like that, generations of fans felt the disconnect. In a press run that should have been all smiles and fairy dust, Zegler doubled down. She referred to the prince as a stalker. She said her version of Snow White wouldn't be saved by a man. She called the original 1937 film weird and insisted her version would fix it. Fans didn't just disagree. They were genuinely confused. This wasn't an actress being bold or brave. This was someone trashing the very story she was hired to tell. And it didn't stop there. As more interviews surfaced, her tone got sharper, sarcastic, almost bitter. She joked about cutting scenes, about not caring what people thought, and even accused fans of being entitled. Some of her defenders claimed she was just being modern. But for everyone else, it felt like watching someone light the blueprint on fire while still standing on it. Social media exploded. Memes, reactions, edits, backlash. And through it all, Zegler leaned in harder. One viral clip even showed her mocking the concept of damsels in distress, while sitting on a panel promoting a movie where she plays one. The irony was lost on no one. "If you hate the story so much," one fan tweeted, "why did you take the part?" That tweet alone got over 300,000 likes, and the message was clear. The backlash wasn't about politics, it was about respect. Because for many, Snow White isn't just a character. She's nostalgia, childhood, family, a symbol of something, good in a world that's gotten colder. And now that symbol was being used as a personal soapbox. The movie had stopped being about fantasy and started being about messaging, which raised one very uncomfortable question. Did anyone at Disney even watch these interviews before they aired? Because the damage wasn't just public opinion, it was internal. Reports say marketing teams were furious, brand managers felt blindsided, and even other cast members allegedly began distancing themselves from Zegler behind the scenes. The film hadn't even released yet, but the story, it was already falling apart. And while Rachel doubled down, audiences quietly made up their minds. By the time Snow White finally hit theaters, the damage was already done. It opened with a whimper, not a bang, pulling in just a few million on its opening weekend. Theaters were nearly empty. Online ticket apps showed entire rows unsold. People weren't just skipping it, they were actively avoiding it. Meanwhile, across town, the Minecraft movie was blowing the roof off. Critics had mocked it from day one. Too childish, they said. Too blocky, too silly. Some even deemed it a soulless mess. But the joke was on them. Families packed into theaters. Teenagers showed up in costumes. Some screenings even turned into mini concerts with kids shouting lines back at the screen like it was a Marvel premiere. It wasn't just a win, it was a massacre. In one weekend, Minecraft made more money than Snow White would make globally in 3 weeks. 60 million in 48 hours. Snow White, barely 2. And it wasn't even close. Because while one movie tried to deliver a lecture wrapped in CGI, the other one just delivered fun. No politics, no finger-pointing, no reimagined messages. Just joy, humor, adventure. Everything Snow White used to be, before it got lost. Even Disney insiders couldn't believe what they were seeing. Reports say Bob Iger was furious, demanding answers from marketing and creative teams. One executive reportedly said, "It's like we forgot who our audience even is." But the numbers didn't lie. Snow White flopped, and not just in sales. The merch didn't move, tie-in partnerships got frozen, theme park plans were re-evaluated. It was the kind of loss Disney hadn't seen in years. And the worst part? They did it to themselves. Because while Rachel Zegler was off giving interviews about empowerment, Jack Black was showing up to theaters with popcorn, waving at fans, posing for photos, and talking about how much fun he had making the Minecraft movie. And it worked. He didn't attack the audience. He didn't rewrite the story. He just told it with heart. That sincerity, that total lack of ego, was everything Snow White was missing. People didn't go see Minecraft because of brand loyalty. They went because they were tired of being preached at. They wanted escape. They got it. And they brought their friends back with them. By the end of its second week, Minecraft had crushed nearly every projection, sparking what one outlet called the box office story of the year. Meanwhile, Snow White became a punchline, the billion-dollar reboot that lost to a movie made of literal blocks. While Minecraft climbed the charts, Rachel Zegler was falling apart in real time. The backlash didn't just stay online, it followed her everywhere. Red carpets turned tense, interviews got awkward, clips of her past comments kept going viral, and each one only made it worse. Then came the Jack Black moment. According to inside sources, it wasn't some loud, dramatic confrontation. It was quiet, sharp, personal. Behind closed doors, Black reportedly questioned her directly. Why tear it down? Why insult the fans? Why turn a beloved story into something people don't even recognize? Zegler tried to laugh it off at first, but then Jack hit her with the numbers. One weekend, he said, my little blocky movie made more than Snow White did worldwide. She didn't have a comeback. Witnesses say she left the room, eyes red, face tight, not saying a word. From that moment on, everything changed. Her social media went dark. No new tweets, no Instagram posts, only one cryptic story, white text on black, taking time to heal. Behind the scenes, it was worse. Multiple outlets reported she had entered intensive therapy to deal with the fallout, not just from the backlash, but from the sheer humiliation of how fast it all collapsed. The box office, the press, the public's reaction, Disney went into full damage control. They pulled Zegler from talk shows. They halted promotional tours. They even greenlit emergency reshoots, hoping to soften her character. Without admitting anything was wrong, they issued vague statements about mental health and prioritizing well-being, but never addressed the real issue. Because this wasn't about a single actress. This was about a massive studio bet going horribly wrong. And while Disney scrambled behind the scenes, Minecraft just kept climbing. Rachel Zegler had once been the centerpiece of their comeback. Now she was the face of one of the company's most expensive failures in decades. Insiders whispered that therapy consultants were now on standby for other cast members, just in case things got worse. Morale plummeted. Merchandise deals quietly dissolved. And Disney's top executives started asking a question no one thought they'd ever have to. Is the live-action formula broken? All because one star took the mic and said the quiet part out loud. As the dust settled, the damage was done. But the real cost wasn't just at the box office. It was the future of Disney's live-action remakes. Disney had long relied on these remakes as a key part of their strategy. But Snow White was a warning shot, a wake-up call. The fallout was far-reaching, affecting everything from casting choices to the way the studio handled fan engagement. Within weeks of Snow White's failure, Disney executives were reportedly re-evaluating their entire approach to remakes. One source said, "We were ready to greenlight Tangled, Lilo and Stitch, and a whole bunch of other reboots. But now, we're reconsidering everything." Fans, many of them disillusioned by the Snow White debacle, began calling for a return to more original content, something the studio had put on the back burner in favor of nostalgia. Some of the loudest voices on social media pointed out the irony. Disney, the studio that had once been the face of innovation and creativity, was now the one relying on past glories for a quick fix. For the first time in decades, there was talk that Disney's live-action remake machine might be running out of steam. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler's career hung in the balance. Her silence on social media had become a topic of speculation. Was she stepping away? Was Disney punishing her? Or was she simply trying to rebuild her image? Zegler's silence, however, spoke volumes. The damage to her career wasn't just about the movie's failure. It was about a massive disconnect between her and the very audience Disney tried to cater to. A whole generation of fans felt betrayed, torn between the idealized version of Snow White they'd grown up with and the new interpretation of the character, one that seemed more interested in political correctness than honoring the fairy tale's timeless qualities. Fans had been sold a version of Snow White they couldn't recognize, and that broke trust. The public's reaction to Snow White marked a pivotal moment for Disney. No longer could they simply recycle old stories, slap on a shiny new coat of paint, and expect audiences to show up. This failure marked a shift in how audiences viewed Disney's storytelling. For years, Disney had held a monopoly over cultural nostalgia. But with every remake, every controversy, that grip had begun to loosen. Even though Snow White's release was officially written off as a misstep, insiders suggested that its legacy would have long-term effects. The film's failure was a clear signal to studios everywhere. You can't force progress. And so, for Disney, the question remained, would they keep chasing after the ghosts of their animated past? Or would they finally step into the future and innovate once more? In the end, Snow White was more than just a failed remake. It was a lesson in humility, a lesson in authenticity, a lesson that the magic of Disney lies not in its power to remake the past, but in its ability to build the future. As for Rachel Zegler, only time will tell if she can return to grace or if she'll become a symbol of a changing Hollywood, where celebrity culture, audience expectations, and legacy narratives collide in ways never seen before. But one thing is certain, the age of the remake is over, and we may be witnessing the dawn of a new, more authentic era of storytelling.